Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Waukesha Town Board meeting, January 22nd, 2015, beginning at 6:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Supervisor Durr?
Here.
Supervisor Fisher?
Here.
Chairman Merrick?
Present.
Supervisor Radke?
Here.
Supervisor Rule?
Here. And Madam Clerk, have we met all of the rules of the open meetings law?
Yes, we have.
And we can begin with citizens' comments.
Angie Van Sock, South 51, West 25375, Glendale Road. Many topics of concern, such a limited time, but that was the idea when you put limitations on citizen comments in place shortly after your election in April of 2013, to limit open dialogue. The agenda tonight includes another appeal for an extension of noncompliance, an ordinance that repeals and recreates ambulance fees, and more on the capital plan. Let's start with the noncompliance issue. I had the opportunity to visit the homes in question. I say homes because the complainant is across the street neighbor. I found the home in question very well maintained. I would be happy to be their neighbor. The complainant is a different story, from the pieces of plywood laying haphazardly in clear view against the garage, to the snowmobiles also haphazard in the yard, to the broken protective fence on the pool. The complainant's home is the problem. I might remind you, you're not the garage police, nor are you the yard barbecue police. No one voted for you to harass and badger your constituents who have had their sheds for years, in many cases, decades. You are causing hardship for people in your community by the choices you are making. These people are doing no harm, acting on anonymous complaints. Acting on complaints where you are causing unnecessary hardship is wrong at so many levels. A quick review of the town would indicate the majority of people have some issue that someone could take issue with. Are you trying to create a police state? Knock it off. Stop doing harm to people. A shed that has been there for decades is not a 30-day emergency. The capital plan has, again, no documentation in the online packet for the community to view. Keeping information away from the public seems to be a theme. The worst, the lack of disclosure for $700,000 in our budget, and recently money's being moved in a budget without a plan or full discussion. The $60,000 generator that you eliminated without discussion was in the budget for a reason. When the tornado struck Eagle in 2010, the community needed a central location that had power. We have no such location and wanted to be sure we did. You took that from the families in this community without a word, without our input, outside of the public budget process. That move, like many others, was not in the best interest of the families of the town of Waukesha. Finally, your ambulance fees. I cannot find the current ordinances regarding fees on your website. Have you eliminated what was approved and now the law by a keystroke? Do you even know you have the laws on the books? There are certainly people here who should remember they were updated February of 2013. I question if what you are planning to do tonight is even legal. Lastly, our town board has changed ordinances, like the ambulance fees, through an inclusive process, our board did, to inform the public. We placed formal publications in the newspaper, we posted to the boards, and we held public meetings to garner input, public input. You change laws when there are two people in the room and nothing in the packet. Transparency? Yes, it is transparently clear you are not working in our best interest by choice and design. Seems the standard now is it is the minimum we need to do. What a mantra, what a shame.
So just for a point of clarification, was the complainant of the non-compliant anonymous, or did you know who it was?
In this case, they have been anonymous.
Oh, so in this case, you knew who it was.
It was in your packet. And I was glad.
I'm just asking, you said it was anonymous.
I said they have been anonymous. I didn't say this.
Anybody else? See nobody, we'll move on. Go ahead.
Good evening, Sandy Hom, West 230, South 3827 Milky Way Road. I have just one thing I wanted to touch on tonight, and it was the thing that Ms. Van Sock led off with. I was here when the ordinance was changed. I know there was a discussion between various individuals on the board as to how much flexibility was going to be in the ordinance. And I viewed the ordinance as reducing your flexibility. And I would like to see, I know when everyone makes a decision, they know and believe in their heart they're making the right decision. And they should know that. But that doesn't mean that every decision that they make is the right decision. And it's okay to go back and revisit things. I think that was a bad decision. I don't think it makes Waukesha, the town of Waukesha, a great place to live. I would like you to empower yourself to have more flexibility. And I did read the letter from the inspector, and it mentioned this kind of weather and coming in and asking for an extension. But my remembrance from meetings past is we're now limited to 30 days. And it just seems that even if you're going to write it down, it should be a seasonal kind of a thing. Or if it's after Thanksgiving or, whatever it is. But, to expect somebody to jump out in 30 days or suffer financial penalties, it just doesn't seem friendly. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. If there's no objections from other members of the board, I'd like to take the closed session first.
Just before we move on, I have the policy here somewhere.
Everyone has it on their desk in there.
Oh, here it is. So just for clarification, as it pertains to our non-compliance policy, I believe that step one of our current policy, which was recently adopted by all the members of this board, all compliance inspection requests need to be submitted in writing by a person, filed with the town clerk, signed by the town chairman prior to staff conducting a site inspection. If the person wants to be kept anonymous, then they shall be directed to speak to the town board member and request the town board member to write a complaint and sign it on their behalf. The town board members are not required to serve as the complainant for a person, but may do so at their discretion. So I'm not really sure under our current policy how we have anonymous requests. Perhaps that was the policy previous, but it's not the policy at this time.
When was that policy put in place?
Initially, I think it was passed, we updated it, but not pertaining to that, just this last meeting. I believe the policy 2 meetings ago, 3 meetings ago, relatively recently.
So people have been.
Well, that was we can only update things so quickly from the previous boards, so,
The previous board
We're going to move on.
thank you.
If there's no objections from the board, I'd like to take the closed session first so that we can get Mr. Macy on his way.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, we do have our representative from Horton Insurance here. If we could get them first and get her out of here.
I have no problem with that. Anybody else?
No objection.
Come on down. This is Michelle Strauss with the Horton Group, and if we go ahead and present what you have, and if we have questions for you later.
Sure, and I certainly am not here to take any more of your time than I need to. So, for those of you that don't know me, I am Michelle Strauss. I'm with the Horton Group. We've represented municipalities in Wisconsin since 1973. We work with almost 800 public entity clients. I've been with the agency for 25 years, and I believe I work with the town the majority of those years. So it's been some time. It's been a great relationship. I did give you a policy book in advance. We are independent agents. The carrier that provides the insurance company or insurance coverage is AAIC. American Alternative Insurance Corporation. It's one of the largest insurance companies in the world. It's an A-plus rated insurer. So, did you folks have any questions about the booklet? Any of the information in it? Anything I can answer?
My questions got answered. Jim had submitted a few questions to you, so my questions were answered.
Okay. The property insurance, it all has $1,000 deductible. That's pretty standard. And there's coverage in there for flood, earthquake. There's also inland marine portable equipment coverage, which includes Chief Buchholz's fire equipment. The apparatus, the emergency apparatus, they're insured on an agreed amount basis, which means the insurance company will replace the fire and ambulance apparatus with new apparatus meeting current specifications up to the dollars shown. And we encourage the town to look at the dollar values on an annual basis. The liability limits are within the norm, the range that we see for a town your size. I'm sure Attorney Macy can let you know if he sees anything that strikes him that might be out of the ordinary. The premiums are a little less than 3% higher than they were last year, which is within normal parameters. Most insurance companies are having a 5% increase in the public sector this year. So the biggest increase that you have is going to be in the workers' comp area. I did include all the loss data for you folks. The modification factor has gone from 1.26 to 1.66 due to claims. So that has caused a substantial increase based on that modification factor. That gets applied against the state's manual premium. So that's a substantial jump. But hopefully, when we look through the claims, there isn't anything glaring. And I know we spoke with Supervisor Radke about that. There's so many different situations that it's not as though we can engineer our way out of it. So hopefully things will turn around and become a little more positive for you with that approach. We do have loss control available, and I know the DPW has worked with loss control previously. We're always happy to provide it. We just don't see any commonality to the claims at this point in time. So, were there any questions for me? Anything else I might be able to provide for you at this time? No?
Mr. Chairman, I had indicated to the chairman previously, and I know we don't have time to do this year, and I just want to pass it along I have seen a dramatic change over the last couple of years in what the companies are offering to the municipalities. I would say, when I started here 30, 35 years ago, pretty much everybody had the same coverage. It was just a matter of dollars and cents, and you made your decision on what you wanted your deductible to be or things like that. Mm-hmm. That has changed, and I think for the next year, maybe you could educate them more about what your policy has versus what the competition. And I'll give you an example. One of my towns currently has one where it's a $5,000 deductible, and anytime anything happens, they got to pay $5,000. I know yours isn't that way.
On the liability side?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing is I've seen a dramatic change in whether they're covering zoning board of appeals, board of adjustment, tax review board issues or not, writ of certiorari matters or not. I'm amazed one community got sued. They were not covered by their coverage. They then turned around and sued the neighboring community to bring them into the lawsuit, and the second community was covered. Mm-hmm. So I know there's dramatic changes over the years, and I just have been recommending to all of my clients that maybe they have to look at that. I'm not recommending you change, or I'm not trying to put anybody, but I think they need to start to realize that it's no longer, everybody's getting... Every company's offering that, and am I stating that correctly?
You are. There have been some new players in the industry that have had less than stellar coverages, but terrific rates. And that's probably what you're seeing. The good news is, Attorney Macy, that in this case, this is the Cadillac of coverage. This is not the lowest price coverage, but it is some of the broadest coverage. It extends to zoning. It extends to claims of tax. It provides injunctive coverage. There is no policy deductibles. And the history of the town has been that there have been claims presented. And I believe that you'll find that they've been well handled by the insurer and well covered. So it is definitely an excellent policy.
And so I would just suggest that maybe, and I'm going to be suggesting it on all 40 of our clients, so it's not going to
Right,
surprise you,
right.
that you not necessarily go out to the other companies and ask them what they're offering, but you have that expertise and you can provide that if, I don't want to mention any other names, but
Right.
you could show how yours is the Cadillac and why they should stay with you, and I think that just would help.
Well, what we're doing now, Attorney Macy, is for any of our clients that do seek quotes from other carriers, we're writing an RFP to try to protect our clients from some of the less rich coverages. Because like I said, they do come in at very low premiums. But there's a cost for that, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make those points for the chair of the, who handles that. You handle that?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. I have met with Michelle, and we did go through a lot of that. I am somewhat versed in the private sector as far as insurance, and I get pretty well educated on the municipal side of things. More than anything, I think you have to compare those types of coverage. Using an agent such as Horton, you're right, they have that ability to offer you particular choices, and we did look at some of that, and based on some of the expertise from Michelle and some research, we found exactly what you were saying. But we did also find, at least what was somewhat of a revelation to me, is that the rates for a municipality is considerably less than a commercial venture. So I was surprised. And the work comp rates, which really is where the increase is, well, the insurance company doesn't have any say in that. It's all mandated by the state. So regardless of where you go to, you're going to pay the same.
Any other questions for Michelle?
As it pertains to the workman's comp, and in particular, the fire department, in these communities like ours where we have either volunteer or paid on call, and a lot of people on the fire department who have jobs and incomes outside of the fire department that are probably substantially more than what they get paid from the fire department. What protections are in place, and how do we cover those people? You might not be the right person to ask, but
Oh, I am.
if a person, is a full-time employee at another company who makes, whatever their income is and gets hurt on the fire department job, what provisions do we have for that?
That is an excellent question. Well, you have in your packet an accident and sickness policy, and that provides protection for the paid on-call staff over and above workers' compensation, and sometimes instead of workers' compensation. For example, I am the local representative for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. We had 4 deaths in 2012, 3 of which were not covered by workers' compensation. 1 was compensable. Those 3 that were not covered by workers' comp would have been picked up by your accident and sickness policy. The only thing I'd like to mention is at some point in time, you might want to consider increasing your weekly disability coverage. And that would be something to look at in the next budget cycle. Because where workers' compensation may leave your paid on-call member high and dry, you'd like them to be able to have a disability rate that would help the family. If you had a chance to look through that policy, I know there's a lot in that booklet. There's some new coverages. For example, if you have a member that's injured in the line of duty and they're not able to go back to that day job, the policy will pay their insurance premium because their employer won't have any place to draw it if there's no income. So there's $12,000 of coverage there. So there's a death benefit, there's a disability benefit, some medical expense, there's family expense, there's $100 a day for every day of hospitalization that your your member might be hospitalized. But it's a great question, and I would encourage you to consider in the next budget cycle looking at a little higher rated disability.
Thank you.
Yes, just one real quick question, a very much open-ended question, but do you ever, in your vast experience, we have a employee handbook, if you will, of the town of Waukesha here. Have you ever seen or reviewed that, or is there any potential for an interface between the insurance coverage you're providing, particularly with regards to workman's compensation, employee handbook? Is there any interface that might be between those in your experience or should be reviewed?
Well, I believe we've had looked at your employee handbook some time ago. I can't claim that it would be the current employee handbook. And usually we will glance through, but we will turn that back to your town attorney for recommendation. We'll go through with respect to insurance. But beyond that, we don't provide legal advice.
No, I understand that. I guess my follow-up question would be then, is that something that you would be willing to do? Is there a cost for doing that?
There's no cost for any of our services.
Okay, so that's something that we could consider. Thank you.
And we're happy to review any contracts that the town may have also.
Thank you.
So, anything else I can answer for you folks? Attorney
we're set.
Macy, thank you for letting me go first. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
If I can do
Thanks for
anything
coming.
else, let me know.
Thank you for coming. Then if there's no objections, I'd like to move on to 10A and B. You are hereby notified that the town board of the town of Waukesha will convene in May upon duly made motion and seconded and acted upon by roll call vote as required in Wisconsin Stats 1985 sub 1 sub C and Wisconsin Stats 1985 sub 1 sub G go into closed session during the course of the meeting. The town board members may attend the closed session. The purpose of the closed session will be as follows. The purpose of the meeting is for deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session pursuant to 19.85 sub 1 sub E, and or to confer with legal counsel who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted with respect to litigation in which it is likely to become involved as authorized under 1985 sub 1 sub G. Specifically to be discussed are issues regarding the incorporation petition of the town of Brookfield. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Durr.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Chairman Merrick.
Aye.
Supervisor Radke.
Aye.
Supervisor Wolf.
Aye.
And we will go into closed session. This should not take that long, maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
I came back from Canada the 1st of June and Superior is still frozen. Lake Superior. Yeah, well, the big inlets there, and comes through Ashland. Yeah. We've been pretty fortunate this year. Kind of
As soon as we get our clerk and our attorney back, we'll come back into open session.
Apparently the liquor license is not an issue, so I don't have to state that. The only one that there will be any questions is on the compliance.
Okay.
I think that was another one of his comments.
Mhm.
If you don't have any objection, I'm gonna take this over into the deemed compliance procedure, because I recommended it at the first staff meeting and have been pushing it from day one.
Fair enough.
And it's for the purpose of making sure everybody's treated the same and nobody is treated differently.
Feel strong.
I feel very strong. I don't like that when I was told that Michelle was trying to leave me. Certain things I feel strongly about.
I'm guessing that's one of them.
I prosecuted for 10 years. Didn't like when people came in and said, how can we, so-and-so got this and now you're treating me this way?
Nothing wrong with black and white. Most days. No? Yes.
I live in a lot of gray.
We all do. We can't deny the fact that there oftentimes is, but that doesn't mean we don't do our best to try to treat people fair.
Do we have a motion to come back into open session?
I'll make the motion, we go back into open session.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Durr? Supervisor Durr?
Yes.
Supervisor Fisher?
Yes.
Chairman Merrick?
Yes.
Supervisor Radke?
Yes.
Supervisor Wolf?
Yes.
And do we have a motion?
I do have a motion. I hereby move that the town board is completely opposed to the incorporation of any part of the town of Waukesha, and further move that we continue to join the city of Brookfield to defeat the town of Brookfield's position.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? One note that the continuation of this, continuing on in this effort is going to cost the town of Waukesha absolutely zero in attorney's fees moving forward, as our interests are aligned with the city of Brookfield. Take a roll call vote on that, please.
Supervisor Durr?
Yes.
Supervisor Fisher?
Yes.
Chairman Merrick?
Yes.
Supervisor Radke?
Yes.
Supervisor Wolf?
Yes.
Motion carries. We are going back to number 5, approval of the minutes. If there's no objection, we can take December 5th, 11th, 30th, and January 8th together. Seeing none, is there a motion?
Hold on just a quick minute. Just want to make sure not everybody was present
on the
at the
11th.
December 30th meeting, so I don't think we can take them all together.
Jim, that was you, Urbon, correct?
Correct. And
Okay.
also on the 5th.
Okay. So let's take the 5th and the 30th together.
I'll move for approval of the minutes.
Of the 5th and December 30th,
Yes, sir.
2014? Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then on the 11th and January 8th. And if there's no objection, we'll take those together.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes for December 11th and January 8th.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to 6A, Clerk Treasurer's Report.
We had public records requests from Angie Van Sock Supervisor Durr and Supervisor Racky's campaign finance reports. And another one from Angie Van Sock, 2012 and 2013 audits. David Van Sock, all invoices, billing, and payments for August 1st to December 15th. Lori Longtime, a copy of the advanced disposal contract, and Wayne Krzyzanowski for the 2015 worksheet detail. We put out the tax bills. Everyone has received their tax bills. We finished reconciling the first settlement in the office. We are currently working on the February election, and in our non-compliance report, we have 16 properties. One that you're going to discuss today, one that's requested to come before the Plan Commission. One property has been served with citation. One has been given to the sheriff's deputy for citation. Two have been discussed and will be discussed with staff further, and 7 have gone to court. 3 are compliant. Our cash reserves in checking, we have $265,498. Our CD and money markets are $1,505,875. Our savings is $3,229,919.
Thank you. Any questions for the treasurer?
Just a quick question, or if you might just comment a bit. There's a significant amount of money currently in the town's coffers, if you will, that has to be passed along to the entities for which that tax money was collected, the school district and the county and so forth. Is that not correct? And can you just quickly address that, please?
That's correct. The county collects our taxes, then we have to pay the county for both the county and the state tax portion, Waukesha School District for their portion, and WCTC for their portion.
Anybody else? And we'll move on to the DPW report.
A little catch-up tonight from our November and December meeting months. So I have for you the November report and the December report. In November, 112 hours of snow plowing. Spent 54 hours on various vehicle work, 27 hours on the roads, 17 hours on the election, and some work in the town hall. For December, as you'll see, 35 hours in snow, so that was a good thing. 47 hours in vehicle repairs, did some road and sign work, replaced some signs for 35 hours. Got caught up on the tree trimming, which we didn't get to in November, in late November, after all the snow. 17 hours of culvert work and some town hall work. To date, we've used about just under 500 ton of the salt. We've taken delivery of just under 1,800 ton. The only thing that kept us from taking our full 2,000 ton was lack of space. So now that we've used up 500, I imagine we'll move forward with that. As compared to last year, at this point, I believe that we used about 900 tons. So we're doing very, very well, and the weather has been very, very good to us.
Thank you.
That's it, if nobody has any questions.
And we'll move on to 7, new business. Operator's license, starting with Brendan Carraro for the Neighbors Bar and Grill.
Make a motion that we accept the operator's license for Brendan Carraro for Neighbors Bar and Grill.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to 2, 2, Andrew Steinman for Tally's Tap and Eatery.
Make a motion that we accept the operator's license for Andrew Steinman for Tally's Tap and Eatery.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to 3, Alexandria Gerhart, Tally's Tap and Eatery. Is there a motion?
I'll move to accept the application for the operator's license for Alexandria Gearhart for Tally's Tap and Eatery LLC.
Second?
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to 4, Nicole Lang, again for Tally's Tap and Eatery. Is there a motion?
I'll move to accept the application for the operator's license from Nicole Lang for Tally's Tap and Eatery LLC.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to 7B, request by Mr. and Mrs. Flagg for an extension on their non-compliance property at Arrow Ridge Road. Is Mr. and Mrs. Flagg here tonight? Good evening. For the record, the town board adopted a policy and procedures for dealing with non-compliant properties. There hadn't been one in the town previously. The town board doesn't take any actions until there is a complaint made by somebody in the town on any of those properties. And once there is a complaint made, we have a very specific procedure and policy to follow. And we are tasked with following our code. There are numerous codes in the town that apply to, for instance, unlicensed vehicles or outbuildings that don't meet the requirements or match the existing structures, vehicles laying out, oversized trailers. There's a multitude of them. And we are tasked with following the town code, and that's exactly what we're doing. Attorney Macy, did you have?
Well, there was some information presented at the public comments, and it's always good to get public comment. But I don't know if the presenter had an old copy of the policy but so I want to clarify a couple of things. One is there no longer, if there was unanimous or anonymous complaints allowed in the past. Sorry, you have to be up there for all of this.
That's okay.
Okay, first I want to step back. One of the first staff meetings that I went to approximately a year ago, I said, can I see a copy of the compliance procedure? Now, Kathy was brand new, I was brand new, or, or at least the first one she was at. And so if there was a code compliance policy and procedures in the past, we couldn't find it. And so she went out and she researched them, brought you in samples. It was my recommendation that we have a code compliance procedure and policies because everybody should be treated the same. We shouldn't have favoritism. It should be, a straightforward process for code compliance. This new policy, as was amended at the last meeting, requires that there be a written complaint, okay? And not only that, you have extra steps after the written complaint. And when we say, and as one of the supervisors read, the first paragraph, if a town board member makes the complaint because someone is, and this is when it usually comes up, they're afraid of their neighbor. So they're afraid of retaliation, so they come to you. You still have to go and inspect it. You have to find that there's a complaint. So it's not anonymous, it's just you're the complainant. You're doing it as part of your public elected duties that you're willing to be the complainant because someone has come to you and for whatever reason, they don't feel comfortable writing. So there will be no anonymous complaints. You can't say that I signed it on behalf of somebody anonymously. You are the complainant. I just want to make sure you understand that. So there is no anonymous complaint under this policy. Secondly, I was very concerned under the first draft that we couldn't deal with seasonal issues. And the way it was presented at the public comment is correct. That's the way it used to read. So at your last meeting, I wasn't here. Kathy, your clerk came in with several recommended changes that we had worked out at the staff meeting to clarify certain things. And one of them was exactly that. The old policy said you only had 30 days to fix it. That isn't reasonable in the middle of winter to paint a house. This is Wisconsin, for God's sake. So you corrected that in number 4. And the board has they've got to still treat everybody the same. They still got to have them come in and within the 30 days, and they still because that's part of the policy. If they don't come in, and you came in, not picking on you, and that's good, and she came in timely, and so no citation would be issued until this is resolved now. And so you can grant whatever you think is a reasonable time. You can say, well, review it again in 90 days, come on back. You have total carte blanche, no ticket issues, no one is, quote, picked on or anything. Everybody's treated the same under the policy, and you listen to what she has to say, and you decide whether her request is reasonable or not. You decide if the additional time should be granted. This is to keep it out of the courts, because once the citation is issued, then your hands are tied. Then it's up to the judge and up to the prosecutor and things like that. So I just wanted to spend a second clarifying. If anybody wants to blame anybody that there's a code compliance policy, please blame me, because I want everybody to be treated fairly, I wanted everybody to be treated the same, and I wanted everybody to be following under the same rules. And you may have had a policy before, I just couldn't find it, so, no. But this is the policy now. You were all given a copy. Thank you for sharing your copy with me. I feel pretty strong about this.
I
I was
gather.
a prosecutor for 10 years, and I don't like people coming into court and saying, I'm being treated differently than my neighbor. I think everybody should be treated the same. So.
You're on.
We are asking for, I think you guys have a copy of the inspection report. We have removed the ice fishing shanty. It actually was in the process of being removed. That's why it was out in our property. It's now hopefully going to stay on ice for a while. But we found out, very surprisingly, that our barn that is 53 years old is not in compliance. It is under 20 feet from our property line, which we bought the house, it was obviously there. Being January, we're just asking that we could have a reasonable amount of time to remove the barn. There were other citations listed in here, but obviously we're not going to paint the barn if we have to move the barn. So we have to tear it down, and we're fine with that. But doing it in January, even actually, we were hoping to get an extension to June 30th because our problem is that our property is extremely wet in the spring. So getting to the barn, getting everything out of the barn, there is electrical and water in this barn that we have to deal with also. So we're just asking for an extension to June 30th, where the weather would be cooperative and we can get the electrical, water, and the barn taken down. We may even actually have to take a tree down to get it down too. So it's not just an easy task to remove this barn. It's been there for quite some time. And that's it. I mean, we have no problem with removing it. It isn't in compliance, and we understand that, so.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion so we can hopefully continue to discuss this. I would move to grant the request of Mr. and Mrs. Flagg for an extension on their non-compliance issues until June 30th of 2015. I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
I want to remind everybody that you have the right to come back between now and then. This is the date. The officers would be required to issue a citation if it's not done. So he's granted you, I believe, an additional 30 days over what you've asked for. Did I hear that correctly?
I asked for June 30th, and he said June 30th.
Okay.
So we don't have to come back, obviously, until,
You don't have to come back at all if it's down June 30th.
awesome.
I just
That's
want
all
you
I'm
to be
looking for.
surprised on July 1st. And the reason I'm stopping is I'm not going to be here every time. Sometimes boards always adjourn it to like the second meeting in June. This is nothing wrong with this motion. It's what you've requested, and that's fine. But you can come back between now and then if you run into problems, and we recommend you do. You contact the clerk to be in here for a
definitely.
June meeting. If you run into problems and you need additional.
This is an
time.
older
I'm
barn,
not going to say they can grant it.
praying
That's
we
their
don't have
policy decision.
more problems.
But I don't want her to think that, because we don't want tickets to be given out if people are cooperating.
I don't want a ticket if I don't have to have one, so thank
If
you.
people are cooperating, that's the goal, right? Is to
Yes.
get properties into compliance.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion?
I got a question. With our new codes now, like this barn is built such a long time ago, how are we making our inspections and requiring people to bring it up to our codes now when it's this age of a building? Because if we do that, half our town's gonna be out of compliance.
Yeah.
What's your question?
Well, I think that's addressed in the letter here from the inspector. It says the large storage shed is in need of paint and re-siding, the garage door is missing, and it's located approximately 13 to 15 feet from the south lot line. Accessory building structures are required to be located a minimum of 20 feet from the property line. This requirement has been in place since 1948. If you can provide proof that the shed was built prior to that date, or if the shed has received a variance from the town approving this location, please forward that to my attention. And as I understand your discussion, this is the shed that you're just gonna take down.
We're just gonna take it down.
Okay.
It never had a garage door, it's a barn.
I think what the inspector
So a
is
lot of
saying
the
there.
things were not, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
There
no, I
wasn't a-
understand.
But it's gotta be moved, so everything else that he said had to be done
Sure.
is pretty
no.
null and void because of the last thing.
But I think as it pertains to Supervisor Wolf's question, is I think what the inspector was saying here is this is not a new code compliance. And in fact, you know, like if we would have put this in place in 2013, obviously the shed was built before that, and so it wouldn't be held accountable for that. But what he's saying is that this requirement has been in place since since 1948. And if they could provide documentation that it was built before that, then they wouldn't be held accountable for it. That's how I read it anyway.
Well, even more than that, if they can provide proof that it was built legally, they could have gotten a variance, there's all kinds of codes could have changed even since 48. That wasn't the complaint. The complaint wasn't that it's too close to the lot line. That's just a fact. The complaint was it's unsightly.
Oh, I thought part of the complaint was that it was too close to, because it's in the complaint form, so I thought that was part of the complaint.
Well, the complaint is the second page of the packet from the,
Okay, from the,
automotive.
right.
And he just says, these three standalone buildings that bother my view, is it okay with local laws? So, there was not a finding that the building per se is illegal. So, to answer your question, and I think it's the same thing.
May I ask a question? If there's 3 buildings, which one else am I not in compliant with? Because I've only got the ice fishing shanty and the barn.
Well,
The other one was fine then? Is that what I'm to believe? If you just said there were 3 buildings that were unsightly in my property?
I don't have the whole file.
Okay.
Be the clerk to answer that question.
I just
But
want to
yes,
make sure, I just want to make sure that he's not going to come back again, and I'm going to have to come back in 30 days because there's something else on my property.
So the third one he must have found was compliant.
Okay,
I think that's a reasonable reading, but we certainly recommend you ask him that question unless the Madam Clerk knows the answer. Because we were,
I'm thinking that
I have a playhouse on my property. I have 3
Well,
children.
he references an ice shack, a garden shack, and a tractor shed. So the ice shanty's gone, so that's a non-issue.
Yeah, that was actually in the process of being moved. We had to.
And then the garden shack
I don't
or
know
the
what a
tractor
garden
shed?
shack is.
Okay.
I have a playhouse.
Maybe that's a garden shack.
It's painted just like my house. It's a really nice garden.
the inspector did not mention the,
Nothing else? Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not going to end up back here in 30 more days going, do I have to take my kid's playhouse down? Because just wanted to make sure. So, all right,
Anything further?
Thanks for your patience.
no problem.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to C, ordinance 2015-01 to repeal and recreate ambulance fees. Yes, we are aware of the section of the code that was rewritten, amending 5-1-1. Yes, what we are doing is legal. And Chief Buchholz, I saw you back there. You still here? Can you come on up and explain some of the changes that you're making to the fees and what the reasoning behind that is? Go ahead, Kathy.
on your desk, of the board members, I put a, comparison between the two, the current and the proposed, just to help.
I believe there's just a couple of clarifications that were made on here. based on the fees that were being charged and what was reported in the ordinance. And I'm not sure if the billing company got a copy of a draft that was earlier than what was approved, but it was more or less a clarification to make sure we got our ordinance clarified so we can get the billing company clarified so that they match. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I believe all the fees are exactly the same until you get to the non-transport, no transport.
ALS supplies. ALS supplies, BLS supplies.
Oh, yeah. The ALS supplies and BLS supplies, we have been billing for those for years, and on the draft that the billing company got, those fees of $40 were represented on their sheet. But our ordinance did not show that. So I'm recommending that you put those two $40 fee back into the ordinance on the approved copy.
Then you've got a change for oxygen, a $60 proposed fee. Is that the same situation?
That's the same situation.
Okay.
Somehow that got eliminated off of the ordinance copy, but they've been billing it all along.
And then we've got BLS, no transport fee for non-resident. It is currently at $450, and you want to reduce it to $155?
Correct. The copy that they have had 155 and 105. I tried to review back in the minutes from the meetings when that was done, and I believe Mr. Bansky at the time did reduce it, and it should be 155 and 105. The billing company said that the 450 and the 250 was rather excessive compared to other municipalities too. They said for no transport that was very, very high. Most insurance companies probably wouldn't pay it.
And that appears to be the extent of the changes. Yep, I don't see anything. Did I miss something?
That's correct.
Just clarification.
Questions for the chief?
Yeah, Dan, so for the transport, what's been being billed? The lower amount?
For
Or-
no transports?
For the no
no-
transport, yeah.
Yes, the lower amount is what has been billed.
I just have one, I guess, kind of procedural question, assuming that we're inclined to act favorably on this. Whose responsibility is it? Is it yours, chief, or is it Kathy's, or whose responsibility is just to make sure we get this cleaned up with the billing company?
It's actually the clerk's responsibility to give her
Okay.
the correct copy.
That in your, what? Yeah. Would you like to respond to that, Kathy, or not?
I will get it to our billing company.
Thank you.
This is actually a board action. It's not a fire department action. It's the board action to do the billing, and it's the clerk's responsibility to carry that out for the board.
Mr. Chairman, I will move to accept or adopt the current ambulance fees and then the proposed ambulance fees on the updated sheet that we have presented before us, and I so move.
Second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I've got one question. Mr. Macy, back on February, I went back on the minutes of February 14th, 2013. Is this, and there was it a resolution? There was a ordinance passed. Can we do this by having that ordinance already?
Yeah, if I'm understanding your question correctly, when I reviewed the agenda with the chairman and the clerk, I asked that same question, I think. How can you do this by a Appendix A? And I think that's what your question is. And the clerk said, well, I followed the model that was used the last time they did it. And I said, well, we got to find the ordinance that says, because the code book ordinance has the dollar amounts in the book. If you go to the website, because we have not updated the codified ordinance. So research was done, finding that pursuant to section 5-1-1 sub B sub 6, town board shall possess the power to amend the fee schedule found in the town code appendix A from time to time by town board resolution.
Anything further?
We don't have to throw anybody in jail.
I think we're good.
This is an ordinance number.
We volunteer to serve
This is,
a week if I-
this is a resolution to amend the, according to that, it's not an ordinance, it's a resolution. That's what we talked about on the phone, and we're gonna research it. So we just need to change it to say that we're adopting a resolution to adopt the new Exhibit A. And I don't believe that that would be a problem with the agenda. People are notified that you're gonna be acting on this topic. It's just changing it from an ordinance to a resolution.
So is Supervisor Fisher's motion correctly stated then?
I'd have to hear the motion now.
Mr. Fisher?
Okay, let's,
Or we just withdraw that motion and make a new motion.
sure, let's do that then. My motion would be, you can tell me if this is incorrect, my motion would be to modify Appendix A on ambulance fees and to adopt the proposed updated fees that are before us on the schedule that has been presented tonight. And I so move. You want to
May
clean
I
it up?
and direct the town clerk to prepare a resolution to that effect.
Exactly what I was going to say. Thank you.
I'm
Is-
sorry I cut you off.
Is there a second?
There was one, somebody had one.
We have a new motion.
It's a do-over.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to 8A, steps in the development of a 5-year capital plan project. There was nothing in the packets regarding developing or the amounts going into a capital project plan, and there was no discussion on it because there is no amounts going into any capital plan. This is a discussion on the steps for the development of a 5-year capital project plan. And I'll turn it over.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I don't think there are any legal issues with this at this point, since you're not going to be acting it. And I'd like to save you some money and ask to be excused from the meeting.
You may go.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you.
coming.
See you. Seeing everybody.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Supervisor Fisher, I'll turn it over to you for the next 7 minutes.
Sure. Start the clock.
Well, then maybe I'll stay and listen.
We'll stay for 7 minutes. You could be slow on the way out the door. Boy, people are leaving?
I'm just coming for a
Okay.
better view.
All right, did the clock start? Let's go. Quickly, this is just in really kind of an outline of where we need to go. We started the discussion back in November, really at the point in time of the annual budget hearing and the adoption of the tax levy, and put together a real quick thing here of 11 steps, not necessarily in order, but that we're going to have to go through. So the title here is Developing a Plan for Managing the Financial Resources of the Town of Waukesha. This step is already done. Adopt a resolution to create a capital project fund. The town board did that on December 11th, and that fund was funded to the tune of $850,000+. Next slide. We need to, the town board may have done this years in the past, but we actually have to adopt a definition of a capital project. And again, the accountant's going to be helping us with that. That'll probably have to have some monetary parameters, but we need to get a clear understanding of what constitutes a capital project. Next slide, please. We will have to identify proper procedures for dispersing funds from the capital project. And I think Attorney Macy and the folks at Baker Tilly will have some guidance to give us in that regard, but we want to understand clearly the procedures we need to use when we disperse those funds. Next slide, please. We need to, this is advice of accountant, there are guidelines and we need to adopt a policy for the amount of fund balance which we should maintain in the general fund. We're not going to go into the details of that tonight, but we will be adopting a policy in that regard. Next slide, please. We will also be following the accountant's or auditor's advice indicating to us that it would be proper to maintain a contingency balance in the capital project fund that is not assigned to any particular project. That's if projects end up being more costly than originally estimated. That's an accountant's recommendation. We'll follow through on that. Next slide, please. Identifying the proper procedures for transferring funds from the general project fund to the capital project fund and vice versa. I believe that we will be able to do that at the prerogative of the town board. Again, we need legal counsel advice on that as well. Next slide, please. There, which you will see shortly tonight, is a presentation by the fire department here identifying short-term and long-term capital needs, estimates of costs associated with that. That'll simply be the first step along the way. The next one is a similar slide identifying short-term and long-term capital needs for the Department of Public Works, and the costs simply put in there. There's really kind of two components to that, equipment and roads. And the next one is we need to kind of have a catch-all place. There may be capital projects and capital needs that are not of the Fire Department or Public Works, so we'll want to identify those. Next, please. And then when we put all that together, and that's probably going to take several months here, we need to develop and adopt a capital plan which will put all of that together. It will prioritize by years, probably be a 5-year capital plan. The recommendation going forward on that will need to be done and reviewed annually, probably needs to be done by midsummer or thereabouts, so that's in place when we get into the annual budget cycle. And next and last would be, that's kind of part and parcel to it, we've had in our auditor's report strong recommendations to us. We need to adopt some formal guidelines or policies for how to invest funds. We don't have a whole lot of flexibility in that because a lot of that is dictated by state statute. So that's a preview of coming attractions, just for discussion. No action on that tonight. If there are any questions, I'd take questions, but we're not going to act on anything tonight.
Any questions for Supervisor Fisher? Then we can move on. Thank you. You did. Thank you again. On to B, presentation by the Fire Department on long and short-term capital needs. Chief Buchholz.
I get to be the first one to dab into this, huh? Maybe. Are you changing the slides? Okay, super. The first thing that we had presented in our capital budget, actually going back all the way to 2011, was to replace our equipment truck. The equipment truck was built and delivered to us in 1995. It's 20 years old at this point. The truck has had fatigue issues in its aluminum body. We've spent a considerable amount of time trying to rebuild and reconstruct the rear door so that it would stay closed. The truck was purchased from a company called General Fire Equipment in Minnesota. That company has been out of business for approximately 15 of the 20 years that we've owned the truck, so it's been gone for quite some time. At this point in time, when we want repairs done, we have, especially to the aluminum body, we have many companies that do not want to touch it. We have to go to fabricators who sometimes aren't even in the business of building trucks to get things fixed on it because nobody wants to take the responsibility for this truck. The truck carries tools and equipment that we have no room for on the other trucks. We carry extrication equipment on here. We carry stabilizing equipment. We carry cribbing and blocking on this truck. We carry hazmat materials on this truck. Additional SCBAs for the cruisers is on here, generators and lighting. Landing zone identifiers when we use Flight for Life are carried on here. And we also use some of the space in the inside as a command post when we have events that deem need for a bigger situation than a person standing on the street with a radio. We proposed this in the budget, like I said, all the way from 2011. We've put it in the budget every year up until now. And we're estimating a replacement cost based on conversations with vendors of $485,000. Should we move on to the next one? This truck is considered a tender pumper when it was built back in 1989. The body of the truck was built by Darley. It's on a GMC chassis. The truck served its purpose as our second line engine for many, many years. We had the pump rebuilt once. The truck, being of its age, does not qualify as a certifiable frontline engine any longer. Anything over 20 years cannot be certified as a frontline engine. We did have the pump rebuilt, so it could qualify for up to 20 years as a certified backup engine. The pump at this point needs to be rebuilt again. It functions, but it does not function to its capabilities. It will not pass certification tests. Part of our long-range plan from previous years was to replace that truck with the Quint, which we did back in 2009 and 10, and we moved this truck down to tender status only, which means we use it as a tender. We do haul water with it. It has some deficiencies in that realm, though. It only carries 1,500 gallons of water, so it's considered relatively small. It's built with a steel body and a steel tank, both of which are starting to rust. The tank actually rusted in the front, and we had to have the front of the tank rebuilt so that we could re-weld the pump connections back into it because the pump connections rusted out of it. At that time, when they had that done, they advised us that the tank was not in real great shape, and we're expecting leaks to occur just about any time now. The truck is equipped with a single rear dump, which also makes it hard for us to use on scenes because we always have to back it up to a dump tank to dump the water out of it. So it makes it a little bit inefficient. Being small with a single rear dump makes it a little bit inefficient for us to use. I'm going to talk about replacing this truck after we talk about the next truck. This truck is a tender as well. This truck is a 1985 GMC. This truck has a Monroe body on it. It was built solely as a tender to haul water. When it was built in its day, it served its needs quite well. Again, this truck is equipped with just a single rear dump. It has a steel galvanized tank that's actually in a little bit better shape than 1665, the pumper tanker. But again, this truck is reaching a point where we're expecting leaks in that tank pretty much any time. This truck has experienced a multitude of electrical problems. The wiring from the chassis to the back of the truck is all exposed wiring. It's been corroded. We've had grounding shorts. We've had broken wires. The wiring is extremely brittle on the truck. Folks that have worked on it said probably the best thing to do is to rewire the truck rather than try and keep fixing it. But we do keep it functioning. It works. It's also relatively small. It was built as a 2,000-gallon tanker. In actuality, it only carries 1,800 gallons of water. So again, it's considered a small tanker. With a single rear dump, it again becomes somewhat inefficient to use on scenes because you always have to back up to a dump tank. Oftentimes now in our operations, without a side dump, it becomes impossible to use the truck. We've asked for these to be replaced. We've included it since 2012 in the budget, and our goal was to replace this truck and 1665, the pumper tanker, with a single truck to be a twin to our big tanker, our 3,500-gallon tanker. It carries in or gives us the ability to carry the same amount of water, actually a little bit more water, but it reduces a truck out of the fleet. Another time we don't have to pay maintenance and such on a truck. We eliminate one truck out of the fleet and still serve serve the capacity that we need. Estimated cost to replace this truck or to build this truck is about $360,000.
Just a real quick question. So then would that be replaced with something comparable to 1691?
Correct, correct, and we'll see that in a little bit here. We'll see that truck too. We just didn't put two photos of the same truck in here, but we'll have it down. We'll show you that truck as well. The next vehicle that we've included in our replacement budget is 1652, our second ambulance. This ambulance is a 1997 Ford with a MedTech Type 3 body. Recommended years for ambulances is 12 to 14 years. We're pushing 18 years with this truck already. It still functions. It meets state inspections. It has been inspected and meets state inspections every year so far. We have nagging electrical problems with this truck. We are constantly replacing relays, and they really can't find the problem, what's causing the relays to keep burning out, but that's part of the issue we have with it. It has a couple of interior doors that are starting to fail because of where they don't fit correctly, and with the twisting and turning of the body, they're starting to fall out of place. We have a couple of interior doors that are starting to give us issues. Again, it's just because of age and wear and tear. It also has a couple of issues with interior upholstery where it's worn, holes have actually worn, and that does become a little bit of a problem when we're dealing with trying to keep a sanitary and clean environment in the rig, trying to keep those areas clean, especially in the patient compartment. We're experiencing some oxygen leaks in the wall. The oxygen tubing that goes from the cylinder that's stored in the compartment to the actual valves that we access inside the rig, it's all plumbed through tubing through the walls. We do have some leaks in there, so we have to make sure that we turn off the cylinder so that we don't lose all of our oxygen just by the truck sitting in the garage doing nothing. In order to fix that, they'd have to dismantle the body and take the interior walls out in order to get to the plumbing to repair that. And we're not sure that's an expense that's worth experiencing at this point. It's just as easy to turn the valve off. Budget cost to replace this is estimated at $225,000. A little over a year ago, we were directed to look at getting specs for a new ambulance to replace it, and we did that, and that's kind of where these estimates are coming from. That addresses the most immediate needs in apparatus. Our plan does call for eventual replacements of all the vehicles. In 2017, we will probably ask to replace our grass fire truck, which is a 1684. This truck is a 1997 Chevy. It's a heavy-duty 3/4 ton, so it's almost a 1 ton. It has served its duties well. Unfortunately, it sits with a lot of weight on it. It's at almost full capacity weight all the time. It stays that way, so the springs and the chassis do get wear. And there are some fatigue cracks starting in the frame, so it is time to really start looking at moving that truck out of the fleet. We're proposing in 2017 that we start looking at doing that. It's about a $75,000 bill to replace that truck. Again, we're probably looking at something a little more efficient for us. We're looking at potentially a crew cab so that we can leave the station with 4 people in the truck. So when they do have the ATV along with them, we have operators for all the equipment once they get on scene. This is our newest ambulance. Our newest ambulance right now we're asking probably to replace as well in 2017. It will be 19 years old at that point. Again, this rig is functioning well. It's starting to show corrosion problems with the aluminum, especially around around light benzels and cabinet doors. The truck operates quite well. We did have to replace the oil pan in this truck this last year. The oil pan corroded and rusted through, so we had to do that. Again, we're estimating to replace that truck in 2017. It costs about $230,000. Our utility truck, this truck gets used every day. I use this truck every day. The fire inspector uses this truck. We use it, a good example, we used it the other day on the fire at Complete Towing. When you saw it come back here loaded with hose and air packs, it serves its purpose to move a lot of equipment that we can't just tuck in someplace. But this truck does get used every day. This truck is will be fit. We're looking to replace it in 2018. It's a 2003. We're looking at a price tag of about $52,000 by then. This is our frontline engine, 1667. We're looking to replace this in 2020, or it will probably have to be refurbished. We don't really need a second line engine, but it could be used an additional 5 years if it was a second line engine and not a frontline engine. We only operate with one engine here with the Quint, so we really have no second backup engine. We need to maintain a frontline engine. Again, this truck will be 21 years old in 2020. That's about the range of time that we're looking to replace that truck. At that point, you're probably looking at about $675,000. This is 1691, this is our large tender. This is the tender that we propose to match with a new one to make a twin to. This truck was is proposed to be replaced in 2027. At that point, we're looking at probably about $380,000, depending on, folks that can predict out that far. The final piece of apparatus is the newest piece of apparatus we have in the building. This truck is already 5 years old. It's a 100-foot ladder on a Quint. It's a Pierce truck, carries 500 gallons of water. We do use it as an engine occasionally. It serves its purpose very, very well. It gives us access to tools that we never had before. We have roof ladders that actually fit roofs now and things like that are carried on here. We're proposing that truck will be 20 years old in 2030. We're looking at $1,100,000 to replace that truck by then. That takes care of our apparatus. Our equipment, we actually budgeted for 2015 and are going to do in 2015 our defibrillator replacement. Defibrillators will be about $28,000 each. We carry 2 of them, one on each ambulance. We did budget $28,000 this year to replace one, and we have a grant monies that we've accumulated through our EMS grant that we're going to purchase the second one with. So we are going to replace the defibrillators this year. SCBA equipment. We carry 22 self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBAs as we call them. Excuse me. Our 22 units were originally purchased in 1997. They were purchased as Scott 2.2s, and that refers to the size cylinder that they carry. In 2003, we updated the packs to 4.5s, which is a bigger cylinder, a longer lasting cylinder. With that rebuild, they got new regulators and new cylinders. They were equipped with, we updated them with some new technology. They got head-up devices, which are devices that the person wearing it can actually see how much air they have left in their cylinder by a series of lights that are in their face piece. They were also updated with integrated pass devices. When a firefighter goes down in a situation and is not moving, we're required by law to have a device on them that will alarm when their moving starts so that we're alerted to where they might be. It gives us a better idea where they might be when we have to go in and find them. We used to use pass devices, personal alert devices that clipped on your belt. Oftentimes by doing that you might knock it off or or lose it while you're doing work in a fire or in a situation. So we upgraded and put PAS devices integrated into our breathing apparatus so that we didn't have those loose things falling off. So those were done in 2003. There are still newer technology that's come out. The packs are still old. The frame is still the same old frame. The straps are the same old frames that we've had, or the same straps that we've had since 1975. It's probably time to upgrade those packs to get into the new technology. We're looking at $145,000 to replace those. We're looking to do that in 2016. Along with SCBA's, we have cylinders. Our new cylinders are composite cylinders. They're no longer steel or aluminum, but they're made out of a composite fiberglass mixture. Those cylinders have a life of 15 years. In 2020, we will have to replace 40 of those cylinders. At today's cost, that's going to be about $40,000. In 2021, we'll have 33 more of those cylinders to replace. And again, at today's cost, of about $33,000. And then we have our facilities. In 2001, when we put the addition on, we had asked for some living quarters, sleeping quarters, kitchen, shower locker room areas, so that we could have people stay at our station. At some point in time, we thought that was going to need to happen if we were going to maintain low response times and recruit folks that to participate in the department. We may have to have facilities so that they can stay here. We proposed that back in 2001 when we put the addition on, and that was cut to cut costs of putting the addition on the building. We'd like to propose for a lounge area, showers and locker rooms, sleeping area, a kitchen area that isn't going to interrupt town meetings and such, and improvements to the air makeup unit in the lower bay. We're looking at potentially upgrades as an estimate of $500,000 or possibly more, and start looking at that as early as 2016. The other thing that we've had on here, actually it was in the budget, was the $60,000 for backup generator. I'm hoping those funds get restored, as we do need some kind of backup generator system. If we have a power outage, we have garage doors that we cannot open without getting out a ladder and unbolting the openers off of them and then manually pushing them up. Delays time, delays our response, but that's the only way to get out of the building without power. That's what I have for you tonight.
Questions for the chief?
Real simple one, and I know this hopefully off screen, but the replacing of the SCBA cylinders, why is this for over 2 years? Were they purchased a year apart or something? Or what?
Correct. When we made the purchase, we purposely bought them out of 2 separate batches so that we didn't have to replace all of them at one time. Because if we had to replace all of them at one time, we could potentially be without cylinders completely, and we didn't want that to happen.
Anybody else? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
On to 9, accounts payable. I'd like to take this 3 separate ways. We've got bills applied to the 2014 budget in the amount of $12,282.36.
Make a motion that we pay the bills applied to 2014 in that amount.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to bills applied to 2015 in the amount of $95,809.60.
I'll make a motion that we approve those.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And on to the last one, which is for overpayments and property tax payments in the amount of $58,406.73. Is there a motion?
Make a motion that we pay the tax overpayments in that amount.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And lastly, a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming.